And good morning, folks. My name is Dennis Sheehan at the John H Chafee Fitness Center, Naval Station, Newport. This is part of our continuing series, Get It Done in 2021. If you've seen previous videos, you've seen that we've built a program of movement preparation. We did a bunch of lower body stuff and then finished up in the last few weeks with upper body stuff. So what we're going to do now is just transition to some training tips that we hope will enable you to work out, to practice with more safety, effectiveness, and efficiency. Those were our three bywords. Make it safe, make it effective, make it efficient. Right? So what I wanted to talk about today, it builds on what Christina and Pat and Kat and I were doing previously, and the topic is your stance. So there are three possible stances that you can have. The symmetric stance, right, where your weight is on both legs evenly. So, you know, you might from here do a squat, for instance, or, you know, maybe you're doing a deadlift, or you're doing a kettlebell swing, right? So symmetric stance. There's the split stance, right? You know, that's like walking. Every time you walk or run, you are engaging in the split stance. And so this is natural for obviously doing lunges, which we were doing in some of these previous videos, forward lunges, or, you know, obviously, you know, reverse lunges. Okay. If we had a bench, which I do not have, we could talk about doing split squats, where, you know, this back leg would be up on the bench, and I'd be doing a squat with the weight on that front leg. I don't have a bench here, right? So that's the split stance, and then the third stance, of course, is the single leg stance, which again, you know, if you're running, right, at some point you are on a single leg stance, right? So that's pretty obvious, right? So, you know, to practice single leg stance stuff, you know, probably the most common one is a single leg deadlift, which again, I noticed I was not in balance there, right? Well, Christina had taken us through some single leg deadlifts, right? And that's an important component of practicing that often gets neglected, right? So the whole point of today, and it's going to be short here, we're going to take 10 minutes here, is just to get you thinking about, okay, am I practicing my symmetric stance? Am I practicing my split stance? And then am I practicing my single leg stance? Okay. Now, I think one of the really cool things about all of these stances is that you can combine symmetric weight with a certain stance, or asymmetric weight with a certain stance. So let me just illustrate here, right? I got two dumbbells, right? So I've got a symmetric stance, and now I've got symmetric weights, right? 10-pound dumbbells in each hand. So clearly I am now perfectly balanced. My weight is on both my legs. My arms are holding an equivalent amount of weight. Right? So anything I do here presumably is going to reflect that symmetry, right? Okay. Now, again, the interesting variation of that is to make it asymmetric. So now I have a symmetric stance, but now I've only got weight on one side, right? And I don't want to let that weight pull me. This, of course, is too light to do that. But if I picked up one of those heavy kettlebells over there, it would have a tendency to pull me in the direction of the weight, of course. So I have to find a way to fight that, right? So that asymmetry of the weight can help you train your body to be in the correct alignment, right? And again, you know, one of the cool things here is you can think about these weights at different heights. So I could have one weight or two weights here. I could have one weight or two weights here. I could have one weight or two weights here, right? And so these all reflect then different challenges. Now I'm symmetrically stance, but I have an asymmetric load here, right? And obviously I can do that same sort of thing with the other stances, right? So I can go into split stance with weights in both arms, okay? And again, here, here, here is going to reflect different challenges. But I could make it asymmetric by getting rid of one of these, right? And simply, you know, doing it. So again, now I'm going to be pulled this way. So I have to make sure that I don't collapse over, for instance. A little bit extra challenge by having this asymmetric weight in the split stance. Okay? And then, you know, again, finally, in the single leg stance, so I probably want to start out unweighted. In fact, in all of these movements, right? That's one of the important things I should have said this right at the start. And whenever you're doing a movement, you should do it unweighted first, right? Get it into your brain. You know, we talk about muscle memory. It's not muscles that have the memory. It's, of course, it's the brain that tells the muscles what to do that has the memory. Right? And so what you always want to do with a movement is make sure you own that movement unweighted. Right? So you know, a single leg deadlift is a difficult movement. Right? Make no mistake about it. Right? Even unweighted, it is difficult to do. Right? So there you go. So you can see I was a little wobbly there, right? So, you know, we talked about this before. Don't hesitate to, you know, use something. It's kind of in the way here, but right now I got some support here, and now it's a lot easier for me to do that, right? So don't hesitate to use something at the start. You know, you could just have a plastic dowel or something that you held on to when you were learning the movement, grooving the movement, trying to create that muscle memory. Okay, and you know, make sure you do it sort of again. All movements when you're learning them, don't rush through them, right? Because speed is a way of compensating for not owning the movement, right? If I go, oh yeah, I got it, right? No, I don't got it. The idea is, for me to really own the movement, I have to be able to do it pretty slowly, right? Now, obviously, there are some movements that are ballistic movements. You know, a kettlebell swing, you know, you don't go la 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 la, right? You go boom, and then the bell floats down, right? And then you hip hinge, and boom. Right? So you can't train that slowly, but you can do it unweighted, right? You can say, okay, let me make sure I've got this correct. The weight comes down, the weight comes down, the weight comes down. I then hip hinge, right? And then, boom, come up. The kettlebell floats up, okay? So when I'm learning movements, when you're learning movements, you should practice them without the weight. Right? And then, you know, once you get that movement down, then you can add the weight. You can add the symmetric weight. You can add the asymmetric weight, right? And then, you know, as I say, think about the different stances. So, you know, if we were thinking about this single leg stance with a single leg deadlift, you know, the you might have to experiment. Sometimes people find it easier to have weights in both hands when they're doing it. And so, I don't have weights in both hands, obviously. Right? So, you after you've done the movement unweighted, you might say, well, okay, let me try symmetric weighting with the single leg deadlift. Okay. I got weights in both arms, so I'm not tempted to go one direction or the other. So with, obviously, a weight in one arm, you're going to be pulled one direction or the other, okay? So, one of the issues with asymmetric is, say this single leg stance is, do you want it to be same side, ipsilateral, or opposite side, contralateral, right? So, if this is my stance leg, then contralateral means I'm going to hold the weight in the other hand, right? And I'm going to use it that way, right? Ipsilateral, same side. So, you might have to experiment with that a little bit. You might find, usually symmetry is easier, right? Because then you're balanced with the weight in both arms. And then contralateral versus ipsilateral, opposite side weight or same side weight, you might have to experiment a little bit with that. And, of course, remember that all of us have a dominant side. So, what you might find is on one side, this, single leg deadlift is easy. So this stance leg, oh yeah, easy. This stance leg, oh, I'm a little wobbly on that leg. That is very common, very natural. So don't beat yourself up about that asymmetry where, if you're left-handed or right-handed, you're going to have a dominant side, of course. And that's going to be reflected in balance, muscle, etc. Okay. So what you might have to do in that case is spend a little bit more time on the side that's not quite as steady. Right. So for me, this stance leg is a little bit steadier. This stance leg not quite so steady sometimes, and I will end up doing more single leg deadlifts on this side than on this side. In the same way, right, with the split stance, you might find that one leg forward or one leg back is a little bit easier than the other direction. And we do want our bodies to be roughly balanced, right? I mean, clearly there's some activities where you're going to have more development, maybe more flexibility on one side, but you don't want it to be really out of whack. That will end up creating problems down the road. Right? So while you're thinking about your stances, your three stances, symmetric, split stance, single leg stance, you can also be thinking then about symmetric weights versus asymmetric weights, and then your own body asymmetry for dominant side versus less dominant side. All right? So those are some things to keep in mind as you're getting it done in 2021. And we will see you next week.